Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and if you've been watching any of the shows lately, I've been on a kick about complete cities. And for me, a complete city is one where everybody that works here can afford to live here. So that gets us into the question of housing that is affordable, which is a lot different than the state requirement for affordable housing. And to help us understand it this evening, Jim Modugno has agreed to join us and straighten it out.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to straighten you out, but I'm here to help.
Yeah, you've got a different idea on.
I do. I have a whole different approach to, I've been following the housing issue for a while and what the council was trying to do and so forth. And really, I commend them for trying to do something, and they've done something for creating a percentage. I think it's 12% of any new building to have some affordable rental property. I think that's a good thing in a sense.
The biggest thing is it has to be in the building.
It has. I think that's a plus because you could take it somewhere else if you wanted to within the community.
I think the problem they've run into in the past is the contractor or the developer donates money to the cause.
Correct.
And we got money in the kitty for building affordable housing. Yeah. Where do you find the land?
Right. So I looked at that whole thing, and I thought these actions were a good start in some way. But then I started looking at it from a wholly different point, which was, okay, what is the real problem they're trying to solve? And, we can say it's affordable housing, but the question you need to ask is, why is it not affordable? Mm. You have to dig down a little bit farther back. Oftentimes you hear people say, you peel the onion back a little bit. So I started looking at really all the different issues, right? So one of the things that I said is the problem statement might be employees' pay is on the lowest 25. They're basically, pay is not meeting the requirements for housing, for rental housing. Yeah. Never mind trying to buy a house. It's not keeping pace with it. So I kind of looked at this thing and I said, so pay's not keeping pace. So what is it? Is it just pay, or is it other factors? And of course, when you start looking at wages and you have to look at benefits. You also have to look at inflation in terms over a period of time. What's it doing? And then there's a lot of other factors that really come into it. So I said, let me go look and see what housing is today, because I've been living in my home for a long period of time, so I haven't gone out for rent. I've seen my two daughters try to scramble around to get housing, rental property when they were out there, and they lived in North Reading while they worked out in that area. They were paying over $2,400-$2,500 for a 2-bedroom, right? That was like 4 years ago. Yeah. So you can see it goes up. So one of the things I like to say is that, people commute to community too. You believe everybody should live in the community. Yeah. I think most people would like to live in the community if they possibly can, but there are other factors why they don't, right? So I often say that it's housing. It might be schools in the community they're living in. It might be family members out in that area, or they just can't afford the rent. Yeah. Right? And so when I started looking at that, I said, well, what do we got out here, right? So I went to online to all apartments for in Beverly, and I looked at it. And I checked out 7, and after 7, everything else was looking the same. So what I found is a 1 to 2 bedroom was basically in the price range of $1,900 to $2,250 for a 1 bedroom.
That's here in Beverly. That's
here in Beverly. I didn't go outside of Beverly. I figured I'd just leaving it to Beverly because we're trying to address this issue here. And then when you had a 2-bedroom, the prices went up even higher, $2,500. And you had people with $3,000. There were some outliers at $3,500. Obviously, that might have been a high-end unit of something of value. And so I did a lot of studies. That's a lot of money. That's really a lot of money. So how much money do I need to make to be able to afford to rent? So what I did is I checked with Zillow, because they sometimes have a lot of good information. I also found a couple studies. And what they were really showing is in Massachusetts, the median rent in the state of Massachusetts is $3,150, right? And that's that's 1 bedroom rental and so therefore what they're saying in Massachusetts is you would have to have a gross income of $61,000 to be able to afford it. Yet the median household gross income for Massachusetts workers is less than $50,000.
Yeah.
So that's a gap. That's a real gap. And so I noted that, but I also picked up another study that they had out there, and they were talking about Massachusetts has the greatest deficit, meaning the difference between what you need and what your actual income in the state is, than any other state in the United States.
Yeah.
They are the most costly place to live for this particular thing. So my takeaway at that moment in time is, yeah, rents are high, but basically salaries are not keeping pace.
Well, salaries aren't keeping pace, and the supply of rentable units is not keeping pace either. And
Agree.
the granddaughter had to move to New Hampshire to find something that they could afford. So, and this is getting to be a common problem that within this area, you got to be making big bucks.
You do, and you know, if the average wage earner is down below 50,000 and less, then we actually have a problem. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics indicate that the median annual wage, this is 2021, I could not find 2022, was 58,260 across the country.
Yeah,
that's a lot of cost.
Well, one of the ones that got me, and I've probably used this example, I'm going to word it out, excuse me, is when I moved into Beverly 55 years ago, bought a house for $32,000, and I was making $30,000 at the time. And by the rules of the game back then, you never bought a house more than 1 year's salary. So I was already stretching to get it. Well, it worked out okay, paid off the mortgage in 25 years. It was an FHA mortgage, Federal Housing Administration. And, yeah, I got a little help from the government because they kept the rate down. Then I went through the arithmetic of, okay, what's it worth now? And like you, I looked at Zillow, and I got an answer, depending on when I looked, around $1 million for that house. Hey, that's pretty good. Then I went through the CPI, Consumer Price Index correction, and a $1968, to have the similar buying power, you have to have $8 now. So that said, okay, that $32,000 for the value of the house should now be something on the order of $250,000, but it's worth $1 million. So there's just another factor in there. So besides inflation, which is the $1 to $8 routine, there is also desirability of Beverly, which that's great. But the city keeps raising the assessment, and the taxes go up, and it's not real money that I can, scrape off a couple of feet of dirt and turn that in to pay off the taxes. So I mean, I agree with you. There are several factors in this problem.
There's a lot of them, absolutely.
And I don't know what we can do about the disparity because, as we were talking before the show, you were amazed at the technology that's in the director's chair over there. And I was kidding with you that, way back when, if I want to talk to the kid next door, it was 2 tin cans and a tight string. And nowadays it's $2,000 or better iPhones and $20 a month. So the standard of living, or in the case of Beverly, the desirability of the city,
plays a role,
has improved dramatically or increased dramatically. Whether you call that improvement or not, that's another story. But how do we get around this?
Well, you bring up an excellent point. I mean, we talked about the technologies and everything. We talked about the cell phones in there earlier. But it's everything. I mean, you can't go without internet connection, right, in one fashion or another. Most people have a laptop, computer. These are all items that are very, very costly, right? They're very, very costly. So the bottom line is, you and I were reminiscent about, I indicated I lived across the street here, and the Veterans Housing Project right on Sawyer Road for a number of years, probably for about 15 years when my father came back from the war. And so we lived there. And, we had plenty of kids to play with and everything, but we didn't have any of those things, right?
Yeah.
We had, not even a color television initially, just a black and white. And then all we had was a typewriter, so we could do some of our homework assignments, and everything else was, we needed a ball, play basketball, we needed a baseball, we needed a bat. That's pretty much all the tools we needed, to be happy, and we were happy. But today, you look at it, it's a much more challenging world, in which there are more expenses, and everything is more expensive. When the Bureau of Labor, when they're actually showing the wage increases, they really haven't gone anywhere, right? So you get the 90 percentile, the people at the top 10%, they're actually earning 5 times more than the people on the lower section in terms of improving their salaries. Mm-hmm. And when you look down on the bottom, the last 10 percentile is making less than 3% over a period between, for the data. They're just not moving. And when you look at it, 4.3, the last 25% of the people, they're just not moving up the scale fast enough to keep pace with the technology, with the housing, with the property taxes or anything else, because property taxes on rental properties, it comes around.
Oh,
right?
yeah, it's built in. Yeah.
It's built in. The water and soil is built in,
yeah.
right? All those things are built in. People have cable today. We didn't have cable when we were kids, right?
Yeah.
We made the youngest person in the family go hold the rabbit ears, right?
Yeah.
So you get a really good connection.
I like the joke of I was the remote, and I ran over and changed the channel.
This down, exactly.
Yeah.
So so things have changed, but because it has changed, the question is, these are challenges that people need to do. So when they're on the lower end of the scale, they're not going to be able to get up. And how are they going to afford their rent? Yeah. So if you're going in there and you're going to spend, $2,100, $2,200 for one bedroom, how much money do you have to go? How much more money do you need to get? I mean, it's a real challenge. But it's not only just wages have fallen behind. What has also happened at the same time is compensation, benefits.
Yeah.
That's a story onto its own, right? You think about, when I first went to work at the United Shoe Machinery Corporation, right where Cummings Center is today, my health care was paid by the company. The company paid for our health care, right? They contributed they created our pension. They contributed to the pension. We didn't give a penny into it.
Yeah.
But as time went on, they walked away from the pensions, right? Because
now it's 401ks.
And it went to 401ks, and then, and then you had the health care. You now had to pick up the health care. And, you and I both know that health care is something people need to have.
Yeah.
And it's getting more expensive year after year after year. And the companies they're paying a share of that, but you're also paying more than you ever have year after year.
Yeah.
And you have more deductibles, and you have more co-payments and everything else. You just, God forbid, you get sick, you get a problem.
It never goes away. Even when you get on Social Security, you're still paying Medicare.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
it doesn't. It goes on. And one of the other issues that comes up that got an email over the night, and it's takeoff on a Betty McCaughey, and she was the Lieutenant Governor of the state of New York.
Okay.
And she went sounding off, and one of the things the comments was made is that the Biden administration and the Democrats in New York, Connecticut, and other states are fighting local zoning laws in order to build high-rise apartment buildings with, quote, affordable units in tree-lined single-family neighborhoods, all in the name of equity, meaning everybody can live in a tranquil suburb, whether they've earned the money to pay for it or not. So you think about that for a while. That's a pretty damning statement that everybody would like to live in a comfortable neighborhood. Nobody wants to be stuck in the low rent district. because of lots of problems there.
Yeah, growing up as a kid, right? We lived like I told you, in the housing project. We had big field that we could play in and everything.
Yeah.
We played, and it was good. But
again,
ultimately, you knew that you wanted to grow up and you wanted to have a house that had a fence around it, and it was yours, right?
yeah, I mean, that's part of the so-called American dream.
It is.
The house with the white picket fence. And it's built into people, and that implies that cities or towns keep growing larger and larger, or the area given over to housing keeps getting larger and larger.
Sure.
Because we're getting to have more and more people. And but one of the things that comes out of this, to my way of thinking, is that I had a part-time job when I was a kid growing up in the local amusement park, flipping hot dogs and selling popcorn and sodas and that kind of stuff. And I was making a little better than minimum wage. It was 90 cents an hour. And that's fine. I had no ambition at buying a house or renting it. I was living at home, and it worked for me. And the skill level that I had back then is still the skill level now to grill a hot dog, run the popcorn machine, pull the handle on the soda machine, and that skill level has not improved. And it's hard pressed for any business to pay any much more than minimum wage for that level of skill.
Yep.
And I've had people in the service industry tell me that back when the minimum wage was $12.75, which is not too long ago, a typical high school kid isn't worth it. He or she is not.
His efficiency and output, right?
Yeah, making $12.75 in productivity.
Yep.
So two things have happened, I think. One is that the attitudes have changed in working, and certain level skills are the same as they ever were. And it's hard pressed to come up with more money to do that kind of a job.
Yeah, and for the most part, the jobs at the McDonald's and the Burger Kings, and my very first job, I was 15 years old. I had to get a green slip to actually go work.
Yeah.
And I used to be the person that lived next door to us was the manager of the Howard Johnson's on the Linway in over in Lynn. So I used to go with them it was my summer job, right?
Yeah.
Being a dishwasher.
Yeah.
Well, it was just dishwashing. It was well within my capability to load a washer and then take them out without breaking them, right?
Yeah.
But I only get paid like $1 an hour. But $1 an hour is better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
Plus, it gave me an opportunity to see other things, right? But what's really happened, I think, in my research, what I kind of confirmed was that you think about all the work that we've sent out of the country over the last 40 years, 30 being between 30 and 25 being the key level of going backwards. We sent them off. We sent all the jobs away. America used to be known as an industrial complex with a lot of manufacturing, right? This whole area had lots of manufacturing around. But when you sent it all out, the country now is basically 60%, almost 70% service industry. Service industry is the lower skill of the thing, and it's also the things that will get automated as much as they possibly can. You see them all the time with the technology. They want to be able to, if you got to pay somebody $15 an hour, they want to automate.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what I saw working at GE was we used to have secretaries to type up all our reports.
Yeah, admins.
Yeah, and we had computers, and they were ladies who actually did the calculations. And along comes the computers, and you type your own report, and you do your own calculations on a spreadsheet, or you feed a card stack into the big IBM machine.
Yep.
So there, little by little, that level of skill got surpassed by computers.
They did, and the perfect example is when I was in the workplace, same thing, right? There was an admin that worked for the boss of your group, your division, and the bottom line is they had the digital workstations, right? So everything went through them, and then later on they gave you dumb computers, terminals, because you could see things but you couldn't touch anything, and then all the cards and everything else, and eventually you're right, everything's on your desk, and now that whole profession disappeared.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, in some ways, that's the way things happen, right? From the very first people who were the monks who did the copying and making of books, right?
Yeah.
By hand. And then eventually to the Heidelberg Press, right? There was new jobs that were created once they got the presses out there, right? People that make the parts for it, the people that made it, assembled it, then the people who serviced it, whatever. And then it goes on to the computers, right? And it just keeps going up the line. And every time you move up the chain, there are jobs left behind, and then there's new ones. And I looked at this, and I didn't want to get into too much today because we'll run out of time, but, training people to move up to the newer technologies. Think of all the biotech that's out there. And people say the economy is doing really great right now, right? Look at the unemployment down in the 4% range. I'm going to tell you, I don't think the economy is as good as the 4% that they're saying, because we've already had 700,000 announcements in terms of layoffs in total. And typically in most of the parts of the country, you got about a 90-day window before all those layoffs take into place in terms of your severance pays and other things.
Well, one of the problems that they have with the unemployment figures, there's the U2, which is, like you say, this unemployment. It doesn't agree with the companies that do payroll work as a profession. So they know who's been hired and who's been fired.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't show up.
Right.
And on top of that, there's a U6 calculation that the Fed maintains, which is based on a number of available workers.
Right.
And what they have found is there's only like 60% of the available workers actually working.
They disappeared in the economy.
It's always been a problem. There's a big difference between available workers, which is, I think, 17 to 59 or something like that, and the unemployment rate that they have, because not everybody is working. Right. And you find out that if you watch that curve, more and more people are dropping out of the labor force. But they only, the number you hear on the TV is a fraction of the labor force, not a fraction of the total available. So that's a hidden part of the problem that people are just ignoring.
Yeah, the numbers have always been fudgy over the years, right? It's one of the ones that was pointed out this year is that if you have a job, as a kid, I always had a job, even when I went to work teaching and later in the business world. I always had two jobs. I had my regular job, and then I had I umpired and did other things like that for football and baseball. And then later on, I went and did teaching for the last 17 years, right? This is my second job. That counts as two jobs, right? But I'm only one person. Right?
Yeah.
But they count it as two working in the workplace.
Yeah.
Right? So, and again, they don't have to be totally accurate. The quality of life is shown what's going on around you, right?
Yeah.
Forget about the numbers, but it is out there and it's showing. And the funny thing is, in the workplace, I've worked and you've worked in factories too. Companies always liked, when I teach right from day one. The most valuable resources that a company has is their people. And yet, I can tell you that I don't believe some executives believe that, and I think others have no clue in terms of even caring.
Well, there's a interesting book on the market right now. It's called "The Man Who Broke Capitalism: How Jack Welch Gutted the Heartland and Crushed the Soul of Corporate America." And what it goes into is his philosophy is just the opposite of what you said. People are a pain to deal with. the less people you got in the organization, the better off you are. And when I first joined GE, this is back in '67 time frame, there were 600,000 people working for it. He got it down to 300,000 very quickly, simply because, as you say, why do we need to do it here? Do it over there. And
Right.
he was one of the first ones that I know of to get into some of these other countries, Japan and Mexico and so forth. And you get to the situation where he's more interested in finance and manipulating money than in building a product.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whether he was the one that started it, but at the same time, you see more and more companies that are adopting that philosophy. And one of the issues that really struck my mind and stuck with me is I used to get the GE report, corporate report every year. And one year I looked at it, and Jack Welch got a big bonus.
Yeah, I bet he did.
And I looked at it, and if that money was spread out among the 300,000 that were left, that's $1,000 a year bonus for everybody in the company.
Yep.
And now you start to wonder, or not really wonder, and I start to recognize, I guess, why we're in the predicament we're in now is that more and more money is tied up in executive bonuses than in salaries.
Yep.
And the net result, and this goes contrary to Henry Ford's idea that he was the one that broke the barrier on labor in that $5 a day, an 8-hour day.
Yep.
And his philosophy was, if I pay them that much, then they can afford to buy the cars.
Exactly.
And he was
Nobody.
not doing something, I think, charitable,
No.
but just plain simple business
Common sense.
that, hey, I got to sell these things.
Yeah.
And the other one along the same lines, I think, was one of the union bosses was going through a factory, getting a tour by Engine Charlie Wilson, and Charlie was bugging him about, he says, about how this automatic factory says, and they don't pay union dues. And he looks at him and says, they don't buy any Chevys either.
There you go.
So to make an economy work, you've got to have people with enough money to buy the products.
You do.
Otherwise, what are you going to do with them? Stack them in a warehouse?
Yeah, and that's really where I keep coming back to is right. If you want to address the issue of affordable housing, you need to address the real problems
Yeah.
that are in the background and develop solutions to them, right? And will it fish it? You need to get people sufficient pay. How do you do that? I don't have all the answers on that, but I know at least one thing. You have to give people an opportunity to kind of get there and make some money. And right now, there's too much. There's too much on people, right? If you think about it, the only one area that's growing in this country and has grown faster than wages and also compensation and everything else is the size of the federal government, the local government, and the state governments.
Yeah.
They're all bigger than they ever been, and they also all that money that supports them, and they say, well, these are programs we give back to you. Well, the bottom line is I think I can do a better job with the money than they can. But the fact of the matter is that's a burden that's placed on all the people in the community, right? Because every person that works for the government is a paycheck that people are paying into it to cover it. And I'm not saying that there's not good people doing good work, because there are. It's just size is really a problem. And we can really need to address systemic problems that we have in society, right? You see nurses in hospitals, you see the nursing assistants, you see the medical assistants in there. They're not even making wages that are high enough for them to have an affordable rental property.
Yeah.
And that's not right. They work just as hard as everybody else. People have to be viewed for their labor. They're working hard, really hard. They deserve a sufficient pay.
Yeah.
Is my take.
Well, and one of the taglines on that book is and how to undo his legacy when they're talking about Jack Ross. Well, that's all well and good, but we got a problem right here, right now.
Right.
There is not enough housing that is affordable. They built Anchor Point just up the street from
Yes.
us, and they got 38 units, I think, is in there.
Yeah.
And 600 people applied for those 38 units and met the criteria to get into them.
Yeah.
And the 38 were chosen by lottery because there's no way else. You can pick them.
Right.
And this gives you the idea that, yeah, there's a big problem out there. I'm just not confident I see
Yeah.
enough people besides Andrew DeFrenza and a few others like him
They're working hard at it.
who are working on a solution to the problem. And
But that's truly only that's only one approach.
yeah,
There's dozens of possible solutions.
it's a stopgap. I admit it and
Yeah.
recognize it, but I don't know. You got to do something right now for the people here right now.
And I take my hats off to them.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, if you got some different ideas about this, you'll notice at the end of the credits is my email address. Send me a note, and we can make room for you at the table so we can hear your point of view. And thanks again for joining us. And it's going to get to be a long story about what do we need to do in Beverly and the surrounding communities. Stay tuned.